Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every Tuesday by Andrew Erickson. Erickson, it's only the second to last episode we are doing of this show in its current iteration of a trade, discussion show, because the trade deadline is going to hit in many fantasy leagues here in just a couple of weeks. So what we're going to do, just a little housekeeping, keep people kind of appraised of what's coming ahead. We've got this week's show. We're going to do one more next week. We're going to take that Tuesday off, the week of Thanksgiving, and then we are coming back with a different version of the show. It'll still be Erickson and me. It'll still be on Tuesdays. We'll be doing some more prediction-based stuff for each and every week, but it will look a little different. So if you have trade questions, this is the next 2 weeks to get them in. Erickson, are you excited to be kind of transitioning into the fantasy playoffs-ish section of the season? It feels like it comes very quickly, but it's kind of an exciting time too.
Yes, I am, because to be honest, I'm starting to run out of names of buy low, sell high on X players, because sometimes I keep going back to certain players because I just feel very strongly about, I really want this guy on my roster, or I really don't want this guy on my roster, but for the sake of the content, I don't want to be so repetitive, but I also want to be right and want to be accurate. So I know that we were getting annoyed by Travion Henderson every single week. Buy low, Travion Henderson, don't give up. And it ended up working out. Travion Henderson, smash, second half league winner, hopefully for the Patriots running back. But yeah, I'm ready to get the playoff schedules, talk about those today with some of these buys and sells, and also talking about if you need a player to get into the playoffs, so someone that has an immediate schedule that's favorable, maybe that can also help too. So 2 more weeks, get your questions in, and hopefully you can make some trades that'll help you win your league.
Erickson, I once again was not able to watch Monday Night Football. I am a YouTube TV subscriber, and I'm not going to go out of my way to pay for an ESPN app just for one game every week. So until they figure it out, I am not watching the Monday night games. I hope the Ravens don't have any Monday night games the rest of the season, because then I might actually be forced into it. But for now, I am not. Didn't seem like I missed a whole lot, though. 10-7, and that scoring all coming in the second half. This was a 0-0 tie at halftime. I was following along in the box score as it happened. And a lot of dud performances from some of the folks that we really rely on. Saquon Barkley, not a dud, but wasn't this big explosive game. Devontae Smith did have a good game, which I know you had talked about. A.J. Brown did not. That was a dud game. Jalen Hurts not living up to his usual self, just one touchdown in this game. Josh Jacobs, pretty good, 74 yards and a touchdown. Jordan Love did not have any touchdowns, didn't do anything, and really nothing going in the receiving game for the Packers. Was this more of Tucker Kraft is gone and A.J. Brown having a bad game and that was hurting them? Or was this more of the defenses really showed up? I mean, I didn't watch the game, so I can't really speak to it very well.
I think it's really more about the defenses. I think that they're 2 of the better defenses in the NFL and can perform at a top 10 level. Also playing on the road at Lambeau, it's always going to be a tough draw for any opposing offense, even one that can be as good as the Philadelphia Eagles. So both teams also had offensive line injuries. Elton Jenkins got hurt for the Packers. Lane Johnson got hurt for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's a big piece for them up front. You see the splits when he doesn't play, the Eagles offense falls off significantly. So he did return to the game somehow after going off on the cart and looking like he suffered a brutal ankle injury. He's just built totally different. Lane Johnson, an absolute unit. And he actually did, so he did return to the game. So interested to see what that injury looks like, if it is long-term at all, or if it's just, hey, he's just going to battle through this injury all year long and just be a warrior. So that's something to kind of keep tabs on. So yes, the defense is definitely dominated in this matchup. Offensively, from the Eagles side of things, look, it was more of Devontae Smith. That's why I was concerned about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Smith has just been better all year long over A.J. Brown. He's been more efficient. Career yards per route run this season, while A.J. Brown, career low in yards per route run. And out of the bye week, you think, okay, they're probably going to get AJB going. 3 targets. He had 1 target in the second half, which was on 4th down, which could have closed the game for the Philadelphia Eagles. They went for it. Obviously, it didn't end up working out. They ended up winning because Josh Jacobs fumbled on the final drive for the Green Bay Packers. So Eagles still escape with the win on the road, which is obviously big for them. But offensively, the pass game didn't look too different from what it looked like before the bye week. More of Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert than A.J. Brown. And Saquon Barkley, he did cede some touches early on to guys like Will Shipley and Tank Bigsby, but in the second half, they were featuring him. But again, not really anything that pops off the box score, except for that 41-yard catch he had. That was really his biggest play, not as a run, but as a receiver, which set up the Devontae Smith touchdown from Jalen Hurts.
By the way, and just because I mentioned the YouTube TV stuff, in case anybody who is a YouTube TV subscriber didn't know this, you get a $20 credit because this dispute has gone on long enough. You have to claim it. They're not going to give it to you automatically. You have to go into your YouTube TV settings. It's like a service update or something. And you could probably Google it and find it. And you actually have to, it's just one button to click it, but you have to actually go in and claim it. Otherwise, you're not getting that $20 credit. So just as a PSA for everybody to go do that. If you are a YouTube TV subscriber, at least get a small something out of this. Let's go into our running back buys and sells. This will be part one of the episode. As always, we'll be talking about running backs here. To buy, sell. We'll do some audience questions at the end that we got on social media. Then we'll have a part two. Again, that's going to be on both YouTube and on wherever you get your audio podcast. Do you have, Erickson? I know we sometimes do this kind of micro level trade strategy at the top. We sometimes don't. Do you have anything for us there this week, or should we dive into the running backs?
Let's just dive right in. Get to the picks. That's all people want. It's the picks.
Get right to it. First running back to buy here, Aaron Jones. Why is he atop your list?
So Aaron Jones kind of took over the backfield in Minnesota since he returned from his injury. Last week, 72% of the snaps, 9 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown. Also heavily involved as a pass catcher. 3 catches for 22 yards on 6 targets. And as underwhelming as McCarthy has kind of been as the Vikings quarterback this season, Aaron Jones has been pretty strong in the starts that he has had and played in full. He's been a top 20 fantasy running back in the 3 games he's kind of stayed healthy for the entirety with JJ McCarthy under center this season. And I kind of like the schedule rest of season for the Minnesota Vikings with a couple softer spots, especially in the fantasy postseason. Obviously, this week you have the Chicago Bears, which is a very positive matchup for Aaron Jones. Now, at Green Bay and at Seattle is not ideal, weeks 12 and 13, but after that you get matchups like the Ravens, the Giants, and the Dallas Cowboys. So there are a couple spots here with Aaron Jones where you can feel, okay, I think I can feel pretty confident with him as a starter. And because he's involved in the passing game, I think that does give him a semblance of a floor, even in some of these tougher matchups, especially in some of these road games for JJ McCarthy. So the Vikings offense is still kind of in disarray. They will potentially get back center Ryan Kelly soon. So hopefully that can bolster the interior blocking. And just, we haven't seen Jordan Mason really separate himself. Like, he had the opportunity to really take this run game away from Aaron Jones when Jones missed all that time, but they were dealing with injuries. They were dealing with quarterback things. So I don't want to put all the blame on Mason, but again, Mason was a guy who was really high on a draft season, obviously did not hit despite the fact that he did kind of get the runway with the Aaron Jones injury. Now, some of it was circumstantial just because, again, mentioned Vikings quarterback problems, Vikings offensive line injuries, but still Mason didn't do enough. So I'm ready to kind of take the L on Mason and then just move on and be like, nope, I want Aaron Jones. Like, because when he is healthy, he's been very effective at scoring fantasy points this year. And I like some of these matchups down the stretch. So he would be my buy coming off a solid game. But still, I think people get concerned about him and his injury track record. It seems like he's kind of always banged up, which is why he is a little bit risky. But I think it's potentially worth the reward with some of these plus spots.
To give you a sense of some of the concern around Aaron Jones in the consensus rest of season rankings, and these are just amongst the guys who have updated their rankings since this last week's games have actually happened. So these are up to date. He is 1 spot ahead of Alvin Kamara. I don't want anything to do with Alvin Kamara, even coming off the game he had. We're going to talk about him later in this episode. And they are back-to-back in consensus rankings. Yeah. To give you a sense of where that value is, they're in the late 20s, RB27 and RB28 respectively.
So, yeah, Aaron Jones can be had. I don't think that a manager's holding on to him with a vice grip. Again, this matchup this week is very good. I would say if you are trying to fight your way into the playoffs, he's probably maybe not the most ideal target. I think that he's better for some of these playoff bound teams just because the week 12 and 13 matchups are really tough against the Packers and Seahawks. So I don't think that he's going to necessarily be an RB1 in those types of games. But this week, obviously, is a prime spot against the Bears and then some of those playoff matchups that I outlined.
Yeah. What would you give up for him? I mean, well, he's a veteran.
Alvin
he's had the injury stuff.
If I can make that happen.
Kamara? Yeah. Okay.
I'm definitely doing that.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, yeah, I don't feel it's interesting. A lot of the guys we talked about on this show throughout the year are like, oh, you want to take a swing on this guy because the upside is really high going forward. This feels more just like he is undervalued. It's hard to paint a picture where Aaron Jones is like a top 8 running back, over a 3-week stretch and really like hammers it home for you. That ceiling feels like it's not there, but I really strongly agree that he is undervalued in the rankings and is probably like a smart buy. It's just more of a like, you're going to be getting good value out of it and less of a he's going to be a true league winner for you. Does that feel fair?
I think I'd probably give him a little bit more credit. We've seen Aaron Jones kind of do this same song and dance before where he misses basically the entire first half of the season and then he comes back.
Yeah, but he's 30 now. Like, that's true. How often is that going to happen?
You're right.
Plus, I really don't know what to say about JJ McCarthy. Like, he makes good plays, and like I think he has it in him to be a good quarterback down the line. He clearly needs more experience and more reps, which obviously I'm glad he's getting. But like the inconsistency is like clearly going to be there throughout this season. Like I don't think even Debro like could not argue against that. He loves JJ McCarthy more than anybody, and the inconsistency isn't necessarily the worst thing. Like if as long as you make 2 or 3 great throws, Justin Jefferson can still be good with an inconsistent quarterback, right? It's just going to be less consistent. The problem for me is just the general offense scoring opportunities if he is that inconsistent. And so if he continues to take steps forward, which I think is totally on the table, then the scoring opportunities can be there for Jones. If not, that does worry me too. Again, not in terms of him as a value, but in terms of as far as having a high ceiling.
I would agree with that. 2 names to throw at you before we get to the next buy low running back or just buy running back. Woody Marks or Aaron Jones, or Rachaad White or Aaron Jones, or Tyron Tracy. That's another name too. Or Aaron Jones.
Do we know what's going on with Bucky Irving before I answer the Rachaad White one?
He's not coming back. I'm not sure it matters. So,
I would rather have Jones than Tyron Tracy.
Okay.
Which I don't know if that's considered, a hot take or not. Like I to me, that's actually a fairly easy call. Marks versus Jones, I actually think is not an easy call. I would probably slightly lean Jones, but I see them as very close.
But that's one that you could see get done if you trade Marks.
Yes. Yeah, I could see that getting done. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's go to your next running back to buy.
Jaylen Warren. So he has been on this show before, so we are repeating some names, so I am cheating.
He has been discussed on the show before. He has not been on the program. He's not a friend of the show.
Well, we never know. You never know which guest. Again, we're going to do some wild things after the trades end with some of these predictions. So maybe the bold prediction is we'll get Jaylen Warren on the Fantasy Pros program. Regardless, I expect Warren to finish the season very strong. So far this year, he's RB 18 expected points per game, and I think that he's kind of been the most efficient guy of the Steelers running backs. Last week, 14 carries for 70 yards. Again, did not pop off with this monster game just because we saw the Steelers offense really struggle against the Chargers. But despite that, Jaylen Warren was still giving you something. Despite a terrible performance from the offense overall, he's jumping over dudes. He's looking explosive. He's breaking tackles. He's just a good player. He's ranked really highly in terms of some of the efficiency metrics this year. 19th in PFF's grades, 11th in rushing success rate. He only has 2 rushing touchdowns all year long. So I think that he's going to be bound for some positive touchdown regression because he's been so efficient as a rusher this season. They're facing the Bengals this week. They're the number 1 defense in terms of giving up fantasy points allowed to running backs. I don't think that things have improved over their bye week. Maybe Joe Burrow coming back at some point inspires the defense to make a tackle, but is it going to mean they're going to make the tackle every single time? Probably not. So again, similar to Aaron Jones, I like some of these spots here for Jaylen Warren, especially over the next 4 weeks. So if you're trying to make a playoff push, I think that Jaylen Warren can kind of be the key to that to really give you some boosted running back production, especially if he starts to run a little bit hotter with some of these touchdowns, some of these plus matchups for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I like buying Jaylen Warren. He's a good player. He's been efficient this season, and he's due for some touchdowns.
If you look at the top 25 running backs in just terms of rushing yards this season, this is across the whole NFL. Top 25, 1 running back has a single touchdown. That's Alvin Kamara. There is a 4-way tie for second lowest, and Jaylen Warren, it's on that list. It's him, Tony Pollard, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson. So, guys that you would expect to have scored more based on the number of rushing yards that they have at this point in the year, running cold. Warren's in that list, in that conversation. Is he somebody like? I don't feel the same way about him as I did about Aaron Jones in terms of saying he doesn't have a real ceiling. But what do you think that ceiling is for Warren? Because it is a little hard to see him as, like, again, in that like upper echelon, which is not the argument you're trying to make. But where do you think that ceiling is in terms of he's really hitting on the upside and he's starting it to run a little hotter on touchdowns and maybe like regress in that way? Where do you think he ends up in terms of like a high level outcome?
I think that he could probably end up being a low-end fantasy RB1 the rest of the way because you look at what he's kind of done without the touchdowns, it's basically been a fantasy RB2, right? And that's without any type of touchdown deodorant whatsoever. He's doing it on all rushing efficiency. involved in the passing game enough. And I do think it's noteworthy that Kenneth Gainwell had no carries in this last game against the Chargers. It was Caleb Johnson that was actually the next running back in, and he's still a rookie. So if they're kind of getting lukewarm on, okay, we're trying to limit touches for Gainwell, then I think that does open up the opportunity for Jaylen Warren to potentially seize a larger snap share for this backfield, see those red zone and goal line opportunities. And I think right now is the last time you get a chance, because he's going to have a big game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Even if he doesn't score once, I still think the rushing yards is going to be there, and just given the matchup, he should score in this game. So Jaylen Warren for me, buy low.
Thinking about the matchups too, like I've made this point a couple of times, so just for maybe those who haven't heard it yet, late in the season, I am less concerned about bad teams with good defenses. And I bring that up because Week 17 Fantasy Championship, Jaylen Warren is at Cleveland. That you would be highlighted as, oh, really difficult matchup. That's a great run defense. Defense, especially run defense, is really about effort at the end of the day. And if we're in Week 17 and the Browns are 3-13 or 3-12, whatever would be going into that, like, I think there's a chance that the defense isn't, it's a rivalry game, so maybe I'm wrong about that. But I just feel like I'm less scared in those situations than I am early in the year, because A, people can get hurt and the defense looks a lot different, and B, like, I don't know that the effort will be there if it's already a lost season and you're just playing out the string anyway. So I would be less scared off by those sorts of situations than maybe the defensive ranking would suggest.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably deep in the stats, injury reports, and matchups. Put your fantasy football knowledge to the test on Hard Rock Bet. Try your first bet on Hard Rock Bet today. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. And if you're not sure what to place your first bet on, check out the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. It's loaded with trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, and neither does the data in there. Check out the Stats Hub now. Get the edge and bet with confidence. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida, and it's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states too. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. All right, Erickson, let's get to the running backs to sell. And by the way, we've mentioned both of these names already so far in this episode. Let's start off with Rachaad White.
Yeah, I'm always giving away the goods before we actually get to the running backs to sell.
Just can't help yourself.
Well, because when you ask, who would you give away for this player? Obviously, these guys are always top of mind for me because I'm talking about them, writing them down as sells. So the first guy for me is Rachaad White, I think is a sell. So aside from the Bucky Irving conversation, which we can follow up on here, Worm, because we still don't really know exactly when that's going to play out, but just what we've seen from this backfield the last couple weeks between Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. So we've seen closer to a 50-50 workload in terms of the carry amount. So last week, Sean Tucker was the first running back to face the New England Patriots, the best run defense in the NFL, to go over 50 rushing yards against the Patriots. He was the only guy that's done it so far this season. And it's after another week before their bye week when Sean Tucker saw more carries. So right now we're starting to see Rachaad White and Sean Tucker split carries for the Buccaneers while Bucky Irving remains sidelined. The split has been 23 carries for White, 21 in favor of Sean Tucker, but Tucker has just as many red zone attempts as Rachaad White, as many goal line attempts as Rachaad White does, and he actually has more yards. So although White does offer that pass catching every single week, especially when the Buccaneers are throwing more, there is that floor that he offers. I'm not so sure that I feel so great about, Rachaad White locked into this 90% snap roll, like we've seen at times this year with Bucky Irving out. So given the fact that he's starting to cede or lose out touches to Sean Tucker, especially in the red zone, and that Bucky Irving will eventually come back at some point, maybe it's not in the next couple weeks, but thinking about like the fantasy playoffs, is Bucky Irving back by then? I think so. So that is going to potentially evaporate all the value that White has left, which is the reason why I'm trying to ship him off while he still put up a decent box score. Again, caught 5 passes last week. Wasn't a bust for your lineup. I just don't want it to go unnoticed that Sean Tucker is becoming a bigger part of this Bucs offense.
I think it's a good note for people who might have missed that. White's not somebody that I really like all that much anyway. Like, I don't think he's that good of a player. I worry about how long the usage is going to last. Like, you have already highlighted here, it's already starting to not last. Like I'm just not really that interested in him anyway. So I'd be willing to sell like pretty low on him, honestly. Like I wouldn't need a whole lot. I wouldn't give him away for literally nothing, but I wouldn't need a ton in return to be willing to move off of White. So like I'm very much on board with this one here. Is there a name that comes to mind for you that like just right off the bat, like this is the type of guy that I would give him up for? Like not. I don't even want you to throw out a name that like, hey, you should aim high for this. Like, who are the names that you were like willing to settle for to move off of White?
I think that going it that way is the wrong approach. I think it's more about if you have Rachaad White, you find the Bucky Irving manager, because that's the person that's going to give you the most for White, regardless of whatever position it is. So I think sometimes in trades we become so fixated on this player for this player when it's let's target the manager. Like that's what we're trying to do here. And I think the person that's going to give you the most for Rachaad White, based on the value that he's offering right now, is the person that's sitting on Bucky Irving and keeps getting updates from Todd Bowles that says, yeah, I don't know when he's coming back. I'm not really sure. Because that's panic for that manager to think, man, I just got to get Rachaad White. So that's a player that I think that's the move that you try to make. So unfortunately, I can't see anyone's roster right now, but that's what I would. I would presume that that's probably the best move to make to get the maximum return for Rachaad White. So whether it's a running back, a tight end, a wide receiver, quarterback, find the Bucky Irving manager who's probably panicking, freaking out because there's still no timetable on when Irving is supposed to come back.
This is not a trick question. He has done it this year. When was the last week that you think Rachaad White averaged at least 4 yards per carry?
It was probably the Texans game, I think, right? Which was like week 3?
Week 2. It was week the 2. Texans game.
Okay, I knew it was the Texans. I couldn't remember they played the Texans. Yeah.
He has not averaged even 4 yards per carry. In fact, most weeks he's been under 3 yards per carry. Although 3 of the last 4 he's been over
That's
3.
kind of been, White's not claim to fame, like the opposite of claim to fame, because he's basically known more as a pass catcher. I would say too as well, I didn't talk about this when I was first outlining Rachaad White. The Buccaneers also lost an offensive lineman. They lost one of their interior left guards, Ben Bredesen. He got hurt against the Patriots. So again, another offensive line piece down. That hurts the interior protection. So just another reason why I don't expect Rachaad White's efficiency to dramatically change. And I think you can even probably use the Buffalo matchup this week as another reason to push someone towards trading for Rachaad White, because on paper, the matchup against the Bills is excellent for running backs.
Yeah. His claim to lame, that feels too
mean.
There's something. We'll figure it out. I'm not a Rachaad White guy. Let's go to the next one, who the aforementioned Alvin Kamara. We're sticking in the NFC South for this running backs to sell section. Frankly, last week I did multiple shows with people who had Kamara as a player to drop, like reached that level. If you didn't drop him, this is your nectar from the fantasy gods, your opportunity, just the open window here to say, and then of course there's a bye week. So it's like, how much can you even really sell him for? Even if you could convince somebody that this is a bounce back game and this is the time. But I mean, similar to Rachaad White, Erickson, maybe you have a different strategy here too. My thought with Kamara is like trade him for absolutely. And if you can get a player that you don't want to immediately drop, make that trade.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do here. Thing with Kamara is, yes, bounced back in a big way last week. 25 touches for over 100 yards from scrimmage, 22 carries, 3 passes for 32 yards. Worm, he wasn't a fantasy RB1 last week. He had 25 touches and still couldn't finish as a fantasy RB1, which I don't think that he's finished at all this season. I don't think he has one RB1 finish on the year inside the top 12. So I don't know if you can
He does not. He does not have one finish, and I'm looking, this is in half PPR scoring. He does not have a single finish inside the top 15. You even give him a buffer of a few spots to get up to RB1. He does not have a finish. His best finish this year is RB16. And by the way, it was not a good game. It was in week 6. He had 10.1 fantasy points. It must have just been a weak, like a very poor week for running backs for that to be RB16. But like, yeah, he's only been inside the top 20 3 times.
It's been tough. And I don't think it's all necessarily on Alvin Kamara. He is an older running back. The usage hasn't been nearly as stellar as it's been in years past. I think his receiving has kind of been really inconsistent. Just this past week, yes, even though he got 25 touches, he was still splitting routes with Devin Neal. Devin Neal had just as many targets as Alvin Kamara did, and he's a rookie running back. So that's a concern for Kamara, whether this sticks. How many times are the Saints going to win games for the rest of the season, right? Because you had positive game script here, they were able to load up Alvin Kamara with 25 touches. This might be his touch ceiling all year long. And if this is his ceiling in any game, RB16 on the week or whatever he ended up finishing as, that's
17.
just not enough. That's not enough for you to go out and feel confident about Alvin Kamara when we've seen the shaky floor, where if Tyler Shuck has a bad game, Kamara just kills your lineup. And you can't have that in the fantasy playoffs. So even though Kamara, it seems like, yes, okay, it's back. He's got the volume. This can evaporate in bad game scripts if Devin Neal's more involved. Taysom Hill, he still had 7 carries. It's still a 3-headed backfield where Kellen Moore likes to feature 3 different guys between Devin Neal, Alvin Kamara, and Taysom Hill. And that's very worrisome when they get in the red zone. Who are they going to deploy as that red zone rusher? Is it going to be Taysom Hill vulturing the touchdowns in the fantasy postseason and you're pulling your hair out? So that's why for me, you got to ship off Alvin Kamara after he had a solid game here. Like, this is your last chance to get anything worth of value for him. Like you said, he's still going on the bye week. And I think what you might want to do, I don't know if Trade Persuade kind of help with this as well, but the schedule rest of the season looks pretty good for Kamara.
Yeah,
and
I was
think
going to bring
that's
that
more
up.
of a point of selling than, oh, I need to hold on because it's going to pan out for Kamara. Older running backs don't tend to have monster second half finishes. If anything, it's just a reason to just hold on to Devin Neal, right? Just keep him on your roster. He's a rookie running back. If Kamara gets banged up or something like that happens, maybe you could see Devin Neal kind of explode if he takes on a larger share of the offense, maybe a little bit more juice as a younger, explosive rookie running back. So, yes, the schedule does seem like maybe there is a glimmer of hope with Alvin Kamara, but I've just seen so much from this offense this year. Maybe it's, are we going to be wrong about Tyler Shuck? Is Tyler Shuck going to change things? I know, again, he's had one good game, one bad game. Again, he's a rookie quarterback. Usually they don't tend to elevate offenses, but he looked decent or much better against the Carolina Panthers. So I guess for me, it's I'm not trying to overthink it and think, oh yeah, I should have Alvin Kamara on my team now. That's kind of how I'm trying to not do that and just focus on, hey, our sample size this year with Kamara and the Saints offense has just not been good. So if someone else wants to believe, then I would ship him off.
Yeah, the schedule, getting Tennessee in week 17, you talked about how many games are the Saints going to win. That's probably one of them. Tennessee is so bad. They do get Carolina again. Miami has been a bad run defense at times this year, although they've been better lately. But that, to your point, that is a case to make in trying to convince somebody to take Kamara. That's not a case to keep him in that's a way you get a trade done. That's not a justification for saying, well, maybe, he gets, the volume keeps up and he's a high floor play. Don't fall for that. Just trade him. Again, we were talking about this guy as a drop a week ago. Get whatever you can, a bucket of footballs, and be happy and be on your way. In fantasy sports, flexibility is everything, especially when you're managing injuries, bye weeks, or tough matchups. Your finances deserve the same level of control, and that's exactly what Klarna delivers. Klarna is your smarter, everyday spending partner. Inside the app, you can track purchases, compare prices, find deals, earn cash back, and choose to pay now or later with no interest when payments are made on time. It's the kind of tool that helps you stretch your money further and make every purchase count. This isn't about spending more, it's about spending wisely. Klarna fits seamlessly into how you already shop, whether you're picking up groceries, upgrading tech, or even just keeping an eye on your budget. Klarna gives you the financial flexibility to shop smart and stay in control, just like a good roster move. Download the Klarna app or head to Klarna.com to learn more. CA resident loans made or arranged pursuant to a California finance law license, NMLS number 1353190. Klarna balance account required. Klarna may get a commission. Limitations, terms, and conditions apply. Feels like this has been a largely negative episode so far. Just players that I really don't like. Let's get into the audience questions here, Erickson, and see if we can be maybe a little more positive and help folks out. First question here. T. Higgins and Kyle Monangai for A.J. Brown and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt.
I want the T. Higgins side. That's kind
I
of
want to ask, actually, Joe Burrow. is now practicing. And we didn't really have a natural point to talk about that in our wide receivers episode. We are not talking about any of the Bengals. So I think this may be a good opportunity to just get your thoughts on that. Like, does that change anything for you? Like, he said Thanksgiving-ish. If he really is back, like, let's say he doesn't hit Thanksgiving, but it's the week after, which I hope as a Ravens fan. Week 14, you are at, like, basically the last week of the regular season in a lot of leagues, and then the fantasy playoffs. Are you wanting to pick up Burrow if he's been dropped? Are you wanting to consider starting him if you've been holding on to him right off the bat? And B, like, Higgins and Chase have been awesome with Flacco. Is it going to be a downgrade maybe that first week back? It's like, well, we don't know what Burrow is going to look like. I know he's Burrow, but like first week back, we don't know what he looks like. A lot of rust, all this stuff. We know how he tends to start seasons with a lot of rust from the summer. Like, is it almost going to be a downgrade for Chase and Higgins at that point? How do you feel about the whole thing?
Yeah, I think that the overarching thought is, it's wheels up, he's back, it's going to be an upgrade. But, dude, it's really hard to upgrade what Joe Flacco has been doing with this Bengals team. They're firing on all cylinders. Chase has seen 15 plus targets a game. So this, again, I hate to admit that, but it feels like they are kind of already maxed out. And I don't know if like adding Burrow like changes that dramatically. And it's not because he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It's just because Joe Flacco has been playing, just numbers wise, like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as a passer in just terms of fueling his fantasy wide receivers for production. So I do think that the concern is the rust, where we've seen Joe Burrow, he's traditionally one of the worst quarterbacks to open the year, weeks 1 and 2, if he's missing time. So I almost kind of feel like Burrow wouldn't put himself out there if he didn't feel like he was going to actually help the offense. So maybe it is something that we don't see him until he really feels like he is. No, I feel like I'm ready to go. I don't feel rusty. I'm ready to start. So maybe it is delayed a little bit more. That being said, I think that you would hope that it would be week 14 he would come back, if he's going to come back at all, so you can get at least one sample size of him in real game action. And then for the playoffs, you feel, okay, one game under his belt. Now the Bengals can fire on all cylinders throughout the fantasy playoffs. But I think that he definitely is worth an ad if somebody dropped him, just because it is Joe Burrow and the Bengals schedule is just absolutely fantastic. And honestly, it almost doesn't really matter what the schedule is because their defense is so bad. All their games are shootouts. So it helps that the schedule is also good, but just the game scripts that the Bengals play and just create so much potential for fantasy scoring.
I agree with you. I want the T. Higgins and Monangai side rather than the A.J. Brown and Bill Krusky-Merritt side. Next question here. By the way, these questions came in from Twitter/X. So I try to drop a post here every week soliciting questions. So keep an eye out next week. Like I said, when's our last time doing the trades? And get your questions in if you have anything specific you want to ask. This question is, get Stefon Diggs, give away Chase Brown. This person has Amon-Ra and CeeDee Lamb, plus Alec Pierce, Parker Washington, and Tet McMillan. They, on the running back side, have Josh Jacobs, Jordan Mason, J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey. They would be giving away Chase Brown to get Stefon Diggs. I very strongly would not do this. I would much rather have Chase Brown than Diggs. Probably in a vacuum, maybe that's like, I think it's probably about even value-wise. But given the makeup of this roster, I'd rather have Brown. Yeah,
especially because you just lost Dobbins, right? We don't know how long his injury is going to...
He has Harvey, so that's like a boost to Harvey. Well, but yeah, like Mason is not startable at this point. Like,
yeah, Mason, you can't start. Mason's a handcuff.
Like you have Jacobs, one of the Broncos running backs, and that's it if you get rid of Chase Brown. And you have Amon-Ra and Lamb, you're never sitting. Then you can get together one of Alec Pierce, Parker Washington, Teteroa McMillan could take off in the side. Like, to me, this is very easy. Just keep Chase Brown.
Oh, yeah. Especially because Chase, we just wax poetic about the Bengals. Chase Brown is part of that. Even though he's a running back and not one of the receivers, he benefits from the schedule too. So yeah, keep Chase Brown.
We got multiple questions, Erickson, about Bijan Robinson. One of them was just, should I trade Bijan? And if so, who would you look to acquire? A second question was along the same lines, just kind of asking about Bijan's general trade value. This is something that I talked a little bit about with Tara on our 5 moves to make before week 11 short form yesterday, which is on YouTube, and I think also on audio. So Bijan is on the mind of folks with 3 straight poor performances relative to what he was earlier in the year and also relative to your expectations when drafting him. Nobody is panicking on Bijan Robinson, but are you open to trading him and kind of gauging his trade value and maybe moving on for the right deal?
I would not be trading him away. I would be looking to trade for him. That's the way I see it. He was drafted as the number 1 overall player in a lot of leagues for, I still think, a lot of the right reasons. Now, I just think that this is probably more of a prime time to try to buy low on him. And it's buy low is probably not the right word. I think it just means he's able to be acquired now, because there is a sense of doubt in the back of people's minds that all I can think about is Algier scoring all of these red zone rushing touchdowns in a prime time, or on an island spot, playing in that international game. So I still think that Bijan is one of the best players in the NFL. It was only a couple weeks ago that he was leading all players in terms of yards per game from scrimmage. He's still highly involved as a receiver out of the backfield. The Falcons have kind of just been up and down. Quarterback injury, Michael Penix missed a game. I want to buy Bijan Robinson because I know that he can go on a stretch for 4 games and score more points than anybody else in fantasy football. And if I have that in my lineup, that's something I would cherish going into the fantasy postseason. So I would be looking to buy Bijan.
Other than Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, and Jahmyr Gibbs, I would give up any running back in football for Bijan Robinson without hesitation. I would add to Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Devon Achane, even that's how strongly I feel about Bijan Robinson. So I'm very much with you. There are very few pieces on a fantasy team that I would say no, I'm not moving them for Bijan. It's basically those 3 running backs, and then JSN. Honestly, even like Puka gets banged up a lot. Jamar Chase is technically playing with a backup quarterback. There's really not many names I wouldn't move for Bijan. I do. So I think, because the question is about Bijan's trade value. I don't know if maybe that person was actually asking from the reverse of trying to trade for him. So maybe it is worth hitting on that. But I think the trade value is, like you said, he is probably not untouchable right now, but it is still going to cost a lot. So if you really are inclined to trade him away, I think that's a mistake, but I would ask for a lot. I would treat him like if we were drafting today, he'd be a top 3 pick. That would be the type of value I would be trying to get back for him. Otherwise, just hold him. I wouldn't look to move him just I can still get something. That's not the case for Bijan.
And so you think McCaffrey finishes ahead of Bijan rest of season?
I don't know, but I think he's good enough that I would just rather hold on. I think the top 4 are really clear in my opinion. JT 1, and I think the other 3, right now the order on the consensus rankings is Bijan, McCaffrey, Gibbs. I think you could quibble with that order of any of those 3, and I if I just had one, I wouldn't be trading within there. I would just be happy with the one I have, and then it's after that I feel like there's a bit of a step down. Do you disagree? Do you think there's a step down?
I don't think it's a step down necessarily. I just always in the back of my mind with McCaffrey, right? Which is
sure
all the volume that he's seeing, and the fact that they have been using Brian Robinson a little bit more the last couple weeks. So I know that everyone's getting annoyed at Tyler Algier, but Brian Robinson's kind of been a red zone. He scores 2 rushing touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Now the receiving with McCaffrey's just been super ridiculous, but his rushing efficiency is not that great this year. It just really hasn't been. And that's not all his fault. The 49ers offense hasn't been nearly as good at opening up holes. But, I mean, no one will be shocked if it's Bijan just runs circles around CMC rest of the season, especially if CMC gets banged up.
Well, you know what? Here's the other case. CMC has a bye still, and Bijan doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This late in the season could be the difference maker if you see guys is really equal. So maybe I take it back. Maybe I would trade McCaffrey for Bijan. But I mean, McCaffrey's just been so good when he's on the field in general. So again, those 4 I just think are in their own tier. Well, Jonathan Taylor's in his own tier, and then the other 3 are in their own tier.
Yeah, because he scores 3 touchdowns every single week.
Yeah. Last question here. This is more of a general one. How do you get a league to make trades? This is something that I feel like has been talked about more and more. On Twitter, I know Brian Drake, who contributes for us on Fantasy Pros, had a video and also an article about this recently. I know there was a really interesting article about this from Scott White at CBS for Fantasy Baseball. And it was either this past summer or the summer before that I remember reading. It's not just a football thing. It's fantasy sports in general. Trading has become a real nightmare. It's really hard because so many people, and you and I have talked about this, I think on this show this year, Erickson, so many people are trying to win the trade. They want, the goal of trading for a lot of people in fantasy is I want to share this trade on social and have people say, wow, Fleece, you did such a great job. I want the group chat to blow up and go, I can't believe you got all that value for this guy. It's about winning the trade rather than making your team better. And I just think that there's so many situations I've come across over the years where a trade would clearly improve a team. Somebody has 8 amazing wide receivers and 1 good running back, and they're like, well, I can't trade my wide receiver 7 for your RB2 because my wide receiver is ranked higher. I'm like, well, that's because you overloaded that position on your team. You can't start 8 guys. Like, there's so many people are worried about winning the trade rather than just making your team better. It drives me nuts. What is your solution, Erickson? How do you get a league to make trades?
Well, I do think that Trade Central on Fantasy Pros helps a lot because it suggests trades that are win-wins that benefit both sides. And those are some of the most highly recommended trades that it comes up with. So that's a good starting point. I always think that looking for how to improve someone else's roster first, so thinking before others before yourself type of mindset is also helpful in getting trades done, especially at the onesie positions where, you know, some people will argue and debate about, well, no, my running backs aren't that bad or my wide receivers aren't that bad. But when you look at someone's roster and you see that they have Justin Fields as the QB1, like, everyone knows they need help at quarterback. like they're not getting that by, or especially if they're starting like Zach Ertz at tight end, right? So it's like very, very clear what their need is. And that's also something in Trade Central. It identifies what teams need the most and whether some managers disagree with that or not, especially at the onesie positions. It's really, really easy to tell when somebody needs something. So those are some of the things I've thought about. Something that I've kind of mulled over in my mind that would force more trades out of necessity would be to limit your waiver wire transactions. So you don't actually have access to the waiver wire nearly as much. So this wouldn't be a restriction on necessarily like maybe the amount of waiver wire trend, or maybe that would be the case here. But if you limit the waiver wire, because people can always pick up players, oh, I need to pick up a receiver, I need to pick up a running back, I need to fill my roster spot. Well, if you limit that to, well, you can only make 3 transactions a week, then trading becomes even more integral because, oh, well, I have to make a trade to fill out my roster or else I can't. Now, on the other side of the coin, I don't like limiting anyone in fantasy. I always like having as many options as possible. So again, I don't think this is the perfect solution, but it could be a way to encourage trading because I can't use the waiver wire as much. Or as another factor, making your benches deeper where the waiver wire has nothing on it. So the waiver wire is barren. How do you improve your roster? You have to make trades. So those are a couple things that I've at least kind of thought about when it comes to trades. I wish there was like a way to reward managers after they make trades. So kind of like further incentivizing them. Maybe you get like waiver wire budget or waiver wire bucks if you make a successful trade. And it can't be one of these where you make the trade and the next week you trade the players back. So you can't do that. So maybe those are a couple things that could encourage trading. Maybe even like you get points. I don't know. Like something like that, like where you're really like encouraged to, hey, you get 2 extra points if you make a trade this week. Like people would be like, because what does that do? Like that helps their team. That helps their starting lineup because, oh, I get 2 extra points. Even though if they just made the trade in the first place, they'd probably get 2 extra points anyway.
I haven't found a great solution for redraft leagues. I will say, like, I get so many more trades done in Dynasty because you could always make the case of like you're looking for the future and you're never, the season's never a wash. You're getting a higher draft pick. You're doing something like it still matters throughout the year. And so I always find trades happen more in my Dynasty leagues. Now, the problem with that is that I run into just self-evaluation of your team. Like so many people in leagues that I'm with, like, are really bad at looking in the mirror and saying, like, I'm not a contender this year. And it would make sense for me to trade Derrick Henry because he's older and a running back, but they're just unwilling to because they can't admit to themselves that they're not a contender. I run into that a lot in Dynasty, but at least people are willing to talk trades in Dynasty more than a redraft. So really what I do is just yell about it. I'm like, God, like, stop trying to win the trade. Just make your team better. And, that's the best you can hope for here. We'll wrap up this part 1 on that. Part 2 coming up on YouTube and audio. Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel. You can come and ask your specific fantasy trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. For Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.